Good afternoon, everyone. I am Alao from Section Addendum. So in this subject art appreciation, I am going to discuss about Neoclassicism. So what is Neoclassicism? Neoclassic came from the Greek word neos, which means new, and the Latin word classicus, which means first class. So the Western movement in decorative and visual arts are called Neoclassicism. So the Neoclassicism movement coincided with the 18th century Age of Reason, also known as the Age of Enlightenment. So the art style in this period was brought about by the renewed interest in Greek and Roman classics. So neoclassical art pieces such as paintings, sculpture, and architecture generally portrayed Roman history which elevated the Roman heroes. Now let us proceed to the characteristic of neoclassicism. So first is we have the portrayal of history. Then also neoclassicism has a formal composition, the use of diagonals to show the peak of an emotion or moment. It has local color, overall lighting, and lastly, it has classic geostructure. Now let us proceed to neoclassical painting. Neoclassical artists embraces the ideas of order and moderation in which artistic interpretation of classic Greek and Roman history were restored to realistic portrayal. So neoclassical painters have great importance to costumes, settings, and details of classical subject matter without adding distracting details but as much historical accuracy as possible. Now let me introduce to you some of neoclassical artists and their famous artwork. So first is we have Jacques-Louis David. He was an influential French painter and considered to be an preeminent painter. His paintings were more on history. So two of his most famous artwork are The Death of Marat and also the Napoleon Crossing the Alps. First is we have The Death of Marat. The Death of Marat is a 1793 painting by Jacques-Louis David depicting the artist's friend and murdered French revolutionary leader Jean-Paul Marat. So one of the most famous images from the era of the French Revolution, so David painted it when he was the leading French neoclassical painter, a Montagnard, and a member of Revolutionary Committee of General. So David's masterpiece shows a portrayal of a revolutionary martyr. So this is a painting of the murdered French revolutionary leader Jean-Paul Marat. Second is we have the Napoleon Crossing the Alps. So Napoleon Crossing the Alps is a series of 5 oil-on canvas equestrian portraits of Napoleon Bonaparte painted by the French artist Jacques-Louis David between 1801 and 1805. So the painting showed a strongly idealized view of real crossing that Napoleon and his army made across the Alps through the Saint Bernard Pass in May on 1800. Our next neoclassical artist is we have Gian Agostino Domenici Ingres. He was influenced by Italian Renaissance painters. His paintings were usually nudes, portraits, and mythological themes, so regarded as one of the great exemplars of academic art and one of the finest old masters of his era. So one of his famous artwork is Portrait of Napoleon on the imperial throne. So Napoleon on his imperial throne is an 1806 portrait of Napoleon of France in his coronation costume, painted by French painter Gian Agostino Domenici Ingres. So the painting depicts Napoleon in his decadent coronation costume, seated upon his golden encrusted throne, hand resting upon smooth ivory balls. During his reign, the painting was owned by the Corps Legislatif, which was believed to be commissioned by Napoleon as King of Italy. Now let us proceed to neoclassical sculpture. So the neoclassical period was one of the great ages of public sculpture. So artists looked to the Roman style during the time of Alexander the Great for inspiration and as well as to mimic their style. So we have here Antonio Canova. He was a prolific Italian artist and sculptor, so he became famous for marble sculpture, and two of his famous artwork are Psyche Awakened by Cupid's Kiss and also Washington. So let me discuss first about the Psyche Awakened by Cupid's Kiss. So Psyche Revived by Cupid's Kiss is a sculpture by Italian artist Antonio Canova, first commissioned in 1787 by Colonel John Campbell. It is regarded as a masterpiece of neoclassical sculpture that shows mythological lovers at a moment of great emotion, so characteristic of the emerging movement of Romanticism. So it is a marble sculpture portraying the relationship of Psyche and Cupid. Next is we have here the Washington. So George Washington was the life-size marble statue of George Washington, done in the style of a Roman general, so by the Italian neoclassical sculpture no other than Antonio. So this is a marble sculpture of Washington, currently displayed at North Carolina Museum of History. Next on the list is we have Bertel Thorvaldsen. So he was the first internationally acclaimed Danish artist. He executed sculpture of mythological and religious themed characters. So one of his famous artwork is Christus. So Christus is an 1833 white Carrara marble statue of the resurrected Jesus Christ by Bertel Thorvaldsen, located in the Church of Our Lady in Copenhagen, Denmark. So a marble sculpture image of resurrected Jesus Christ is currently located at Thorvaldsen Museum. Now let us proceed to neoclassical architecture and know more about it. So in its purest form, neoclassical architecture was a style principally derived from the architecture design of the Italian architect Andrea Palladio. So we have here the types of neoclassical architecture. First is the temple style, Palladian style, and also the classical block style. So when we say temple style, it is based on an ancient temple. When we say Palladian style, it is based on a style of villa construction. And when we say classical block style, it features a rectangular or square plan with a flat roof and exterior rich in classical detail. Now let me give you an example of these three types of neoclassical architecture. I know that some of you are already familiar with this. So the most famous temple-style building is no other than the Pantheon, Paris. This is by Jacques-Germain Chauvelot. So the Pantheon is a monument in the 5th arrondissement of Paris, France. It is a building in the Latin Quarter of Paris, France. So Pantheon Paris was originally built as a church dedicated to Saint Genevieve, modeled after the Pantheon in Rome, but after many changes, now combines liturgical function with its famous role as the most famous burial place. Now let us proceed to the most famous Palladian style building. So the most famous Palladian style building is no other than the White House. The White House is the office or the official office of the residence of the President of the United States. It is located at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest in Washington. It has been the residence of every U.S. president since John Adams in 1800s. Now let us proceed to the most famous classical block style building. It is the Bibliothèque Saint Genevieve. So Saint Genevieve Library is a public and university library located at 10 Place du Pantheon across the square from the Pantheon. in the 5th arrondissement of Paris. So how it is considered an art? So Neoclassicism in the art is an aesthetic attitude based on the art in Greece and Rome in antiquity, which invokes harmony, clarity, restraint, universality, and idealism. So it expressed the ideal virtues in life and could improve the viewer by imparting a moralizing message. So what is the significance of Neoclassicism? So the neoclassical movement was a revival of classical Greek and Roman style in art and architecture. So neoclassical works emulated the logical proportion and sense of solid, calm, and perfect by classical civilization. So it brought about a general revival in classical thought that mirrored what was going on in political and social arenas of that time, leading to the French Revolution. So the primary neoclassicist belief was that art should express the ideal virtues in life and could improve the viewer by imparting a moralizing message. And that's all for my report. I hope you have learned something. Thank you and God bless.